Welcome back to Offsides, BUTV10's only professional sports talk show. I'm Mir Patel.
And I'm Raf Bruni. To start off our episode, Monet and Allison DeWitt will recap the Formula One season.
Then Garguilo and James McIntyre will discuss how the Kelces are pioneering the humans over highlights movement in the sports world.
And finally, Smieszny will cover recent instances of misconduct committed by athletes and the lack of adequate responses from the organizations.
All this and more, Offsides starts right now.
The 2023 Formula One season came to an end on November 26th in Abu Dhabi, with Max Verstappen securing his 19th win and Red Bull's 21st in the 22 race season. I'm Monet, joined by Allison DeWitt here to go over our biggest takeaways from F1 this year. Now, there's no question that Verstappen dominated the grid, setting the single season record for most wins, most consecutive wins, most podium finishes, highest points total, most laps led, and many, many more. But Allison, aside from Verstappen's career season, who stood out to you this year?
Well, Monet, for me, Fernando Alonso is the only driver that came close to Verstappen. The 42-year-old two-time world champion proved to everyone that he still has what it takes to compete with the big dogs, despite having recently come out of retirement. Even with Aston Martin's late season decline in form, Alonso still managed to finish P4 in the championship, behind only the Red Bulls and Lewis Hamilton. He stood on the podium 8 times this season, and even though his 33rd win eluded him all year, he was truly a force to be reckoned with this season, kind of reminiscent of his golden days at Renault.
Alonso certainly had a fantastic year, but my standout driver has to be Lando Norris. In a McLaren that looked abysmal at the beginning of the season, Norris and his team had a resurgence for the ages starting in July. His most impressive moments this season spanned without a doubt from Singapore to Brazil, where he secured 5 podiums in just 6 races. And keep in mind, he did this in a car that finished outside of the points 5 times in the first 8 races in the calendar. If it weren't for Red Bull and Verstappen's record-breaking season, Norris and McLaren would absolutely be the story of the year.
Now, Monet, you're not wrong. McLaren definitely had one of the most impressive comebacks in F1 history, and Norris wasn't the only reason. His rookie teammate, Oscar Piastri, proved his worth this season. After his 2022 contract controversies, the pressure on the Aussie was immense. I mean, McLaren literally went to court with Alpine just to sign the 2021 Formula 2 champion. Luckily for them, Piastri was unreal this season, securing 2 podiums and even a sprint race win. The Aussie rookie was remarkably calm and collected this year, even in heated battles against world champions like Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. I think it's pretty obvious that Piastri was the rookie of the season.
Absolutely, Allison. There really wasn't any competition. I mean, Nick de Vries didn't even last the whole season, going through a classic unceremonious Red Bull firing after the British Grand Prix. De Vries was promoted to a full-time AlphaTauri seat this season after an impressive one-off stint in Monza last year during Alex Albon's appendicitis, but the 28-year-old Formula E champion just couldn't hack it in the big leagues, with his best finish being just a P12 in Monaco. And despite lasting a full season, fellow rookie Logan Sargent was about as lackluster, scoring only 1 point and leaving his teammate Alex Albon to pick up the slack at Williams. Sargent did manage to score a championship this season, though, the unofficial World Destructors Championship. After causing Williams $4.3 million in crashes and damages, he just couldn't seem to keep it out of the wall. But Williams have renewed their rookie's contract for the 2024 season, leaving every seat on the grid spoken for next year.
You know, Monet, some people may argue there's actually a seat at Red Bull up for grabs after Sergio Perez's uninspired performance this season. The Mexican may have finished P2 in the championship, but with only 2 wins and fewer Q3 appearances than Lando Norris, Perez's performance has steadily declined since he joined Red Bull in 2020. Verstappen quite literally could have won the championship by himself this year, but imagine a season where the Red Bull isn't miles ahead of everyone else. We saw firsthand how Perez's lack of pace can jeopardize the Constructors' Championship in 2021. And who's to say that Ferrari, Mercedes, or even McLaren won't make significant technical developments in the off-season? Perez has only proven himself as a liability in his last 3 seasons, and I think it's time for Red Bull to look elsewhere.
Allison, you know what? I completely disagree. I mean, sure, Perez isn't lighting up the timesheets, but he's doing exactly what's needed of him. You said it yourself, he finished P2. What more could you want, right? Red Bull certainly doesn't want him anywhere near their golden boy Verstappen, so to me, finishing comfortably P2 is without challenging for P1 is optimal for the team. And if Red Bull were to try to wrangle a Lando Norris or Charles Leclerc into their second seat, it would only end with a futile power struggle a la Hamilton versus Rosberg. Perez is exactly what Red Bull needs, passive but skilled and fully aware of his position as a second driver. And when it comes to the other team's development, we truly won't know until next season, but Red Bull isn't showing any signs of slowing down.
You know what, Monet? Let's agree to disagree. Anyways, F1 returns in Bahrain on March 2nd, and we can't wait to see what the 2024 season has in store.
Now, more than ever, athletes have the potential to show who they are on and off the court. With the increased presence of social media, fans can find their favorite superstars on everything, like podcasts, video interviews, and even their own vlogs. I'm Lex Garguilo, he's James McIntyre, and we're going to discuss this recent trend towards recognizing athletes outside of their highlights.
In recent years, these forms of media were centered around the discussion of their sport. Looking at a more traditional example would be JJ Redick's Old Man and the Three podcast, in which Redick hosts a guest every week to discuss their careers, the state of the NBA, or reveal elements of the game most fans might not know. It's worth noting that the podcast was very much geared towards existing NBA fans. People weren't necessarily being drawn in as new fans. The podcast also began near the tail end of Redick's career, which limited his reach even more.
But James, now we're seeing a lot of these channels evolving to be centered around the players as a brand themselves, as opposed to their sport. For example, it's hard not to look towards New Heights, which dominated as Spotify's #1 sports podcast in 2023. The podcast is hosted by Jason Kelce and his brother Travis Kelce, who are among two of the best players currently in the NFL. Jason Kelce is the all-pro center for the Philadelphia Eagles, while Travis Kelce continues to be one of the greatest receiving tight ends for the Kansas City Chiefs.
You're right, Lex. The Kelces use their podcast to show off their personalities and build a fan base not based on their play, but based on who they are. The storyline centered around two brothers facing off against each other in last year's Super Bowl really brought the pair into the limelight to a casual NFL crowd, and their podcast has taken that new attention to the next level.
And their podcast itself just makes sense. Following a traditional format that featured the occasional guest and football-centered talk, it was the personalities of Travis and Jason that kept bringing in listeners. Two brothers playing at the peak of their careers in completely different points of their lives with funny, honest interviews. What else could you want, James? There was no way it wasn't going to succeed.
You would think so, right? But the rhetorical question was answered literally in September when rumors began to float of a potential romance between Travis Kelce and pop superstar Taylor Swift. These rumors soon proved to be true as Swift later made appearances at Arrowhead Stadium next to Donna Kelce and Brittany Mahomes, while Jason and Travis casually hinted toward and then confirmed the relationship on New Heights. However, as NFL broadcasts began to heavily feature cuts and references to Taylor Swift, fans began to protest. Lex, what did you think of Taylor Swift being featured during podcasts?
Well, James, I honestly am totally here for it. Is it a lot? Sure. But it's Taylor Swift, the biggest pop star of this generation. It makes sense that we're going to see her everywhere. And honestly, I'm not sure what the dads, Brads, and Chads are upset about here. Taylor herself is expanding the NFL's target audience. She generates attention and clicks for whoever is posting her. And let's be honest, the Swift-Kelce relationship is pretty cute.
I agree. That's been one of my favorite parts of New Heights, seeing the relationships with different people that the Kelces have. I remember both of the brothers crying tears of joy over seeing how happy their mom was during the Super Bowl week. Or the relationship between Jason and his wife, the recurring podcast guest, Kylie Kelce, who provides insight to her and Jason's parenting, charity work, and jokes about her husband more than Travis does. But as a Taylor fan myself, it has been very cool to see how two celebrities healthily navigate starting a relationship while it feels like the whole world is watching. Atop of being great NFL players, the Kelces seem like two great dudes, and they're using their podcast to showcase that.
I think at the end of the day, a lot of the humanization of players comes down to the authenticity found in programs like New Heights or The Old Man and the Three. There's a movement of players who are capitalizing on their athletic success and are able to boost that success with their own personalities, creating what feels like their own brand. This absolutely coincides with the rise of player empowerment. NIL deals are finally returning value to the biggest names in college sports. Players are receiving more guaranteed money and more influence in their sport. It's a great time to be an athlete.
Agreed, and I can say the same for being a fan. We get to connect with our favorite players in a way that previously felt impossible, whether we learn about their families, love lives, or their favorite plays. These connections mean bringing more fans to our favorite sports, and you can't hate that.
This past week, Josh Giddey of the Oklahoma City Thunder was revealed to have had a relationship with a minor while he was a legal adult. Despite statutory rape being a criminal offense, the NBA has not handed out any punishment. The incident is under internal investigation by the NBA, but unfortunately will probably not yield any harsh consequences, if any. While Commissioner Adam Silver continues to make excuses and lofty goals, the NBA has done nothing to eradicate misconduct by players under contract. This situation was an opportunity for Silver to make good on his promises, but he has instead chosen to turn a blind eye and once again show these athletes they're untouchable. His failings only make the world more dangerous for everyone else. For example, Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets was arrested in June 2022 for assaulting his wife in front of their children. The NBA only issued him a 30-game suspension, which was reduced to 10 games after he sat out last season as a free agent. After signing a one-year deal with the Hornets for this upcoming season, Bridges was in trouble with the law again in October for violating the terms of his probation, which include a restraining order protecting his now ex-wife. Bridges is yet to face consequences from the league for this offense. It's extremely dangerous for these players to be let off the hook and not be reprimanded for committing violent acts, especially against women. There's an alarming number of professional athletes that have faced charges for assaulting their partners and are still praised in the media and have multi-million-dollar contracts. These incidences of domestic and sexual assault are not limited to the NBA either. Many sports leagues have a history of letting players off the hook when it comes to criminal charges. Just earlier this season, Milan Lucic of the Boston Bruins was arrested for assaulting his wife. He is currently on leave from the team, and the NHL has not made any moves to punish him. These public figures being allowed to continue their careers despite committing these crimes sends a terrible message, especially since a large portion of their fan bases are made up of young, impressionable boys. Major league teams need to start cracking down on these players and their mistakes to show that this behavior isn't okay, or a cycle of violence will continue. One example of a team that handled a similar situation well is the Chicago Blackhawks. Despite having a massive team scandal in their past regarding the cover-up of sexual assault, Kyle Davidson and the rest of management have done well to create a culture of accountability so far. Recently, the Hawks put NHL veteran Corey Perry on waivers and terminated his contract. Although details are being kept under wraps for the sake of privacy, the incident allegedly involved misconduct by Perry against a team staff member. Once the front office was notified of the incident, Perry was pulled from the team and an internal investigation was conducted. He was let go from the team for violating terms of the Blackhawks' internal policies for a professional and safe workplace. The Hawks handled this situation as gracefully and transparently as possible, while also maintaining privacy for staff involved. Other professional leagues and teams should be reflecting on their own policies and acting similar in these situations to encourage accountability for everyone's safety.
Thanks, Claire. That's all we have for this episode of Offsides. If you're interested in joining our team, please email us at offsides@butv10.com.
Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and X at Offsides10.
On behalf of our entire cast and crew, thanks for watching and have a great night.
Curry launches a three.